Hi, this is James Hoffmeier, Professor Emeritus of Old Testament and Near Eastern History and Archaeology from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School.
Dr. James Hoffmeier, Jim, good to see you. Welcome back to Exegetically Speaking.
Good to be with you as always.
You've been with us a number of times. We're face-to-face, which is always my preferred way to do this. We have to do a lot of these up by Zoom, but when we can be together in the same room, it's even better. Thanks for being with us. Today, going to be looking at Jeremiah chapter 7. So we're in the Old Testament, we're in the Hebrew. Jeremiah chapter 7, really an important chapter. What's going on in Jeremiah 7?
Well, in Jeremiah's day, we're around 600 BC, roughly speaking, plus or minus some years here. The northern kingdom has already been destroyed. The Israelites have been largely exiled to Assyria and to modern-day northern Persia, the land of the Medes. And here sits Judah, small little kingdom surrounded by this massively controlled Assyrian empire. And the people have convinced themselves that one of the reasons they're still there and still surviving is that they have the temple of the Lord, and God's presence is there. And there was this false belief, what is called Zion theology, that as long as the temple stood, Judah was inviolable. It couldn't be wiped out. Similarly, the kingship. God promised to David an eternal kingship. So the kingship and the temple were seen working hand in hand. As long as we have a Davidic king, we're good. We have the temple, we're good. God promised us an eternal kingdom. David would not fail to have a man to sit on the throne after him. So the future was bright, despite what was going on around them.
They had great assurance.
They had very certain that everything was good no matter what they did. And that provides us something of the backdrop for what Jeremiah is getting at. He is trying to disabuse their false temple theology.
Now, there were probably some, would you say, false prophets that were taking advantage of that idea. We got the temple here.
Yes, I'm sure it's true, and we read about them later on in the book. Yes, they were fomenting false hopes that the exile would be over in 2 years, and Jeremiah saying, no, it's going to be 70 years, and clearly a clash going on between Jeremiah and the false prophet.
And now he's at the temple itself, and as he delivers the sermon that we're going to be talking about today.
Correct. And it's thought that when God instructs him to stand in the gate of the house of the Lord in verse 2 and proclaim there this word, that the most likely time was during one of the 3 times a year when the population was supposed to come to the Lord to present offerings.
Like a pilgrimage festival?
Yes, right. There were 3 times, according to the book of Exodus, where every male member, head of family, had to show up. And so they're looking for a big target audience, and that would be one of the times. Well, it would be like, the preacher who's going to give his best sermon at Easter or Christmas, because that's when he's got all the visitors.
That's right.
And so it was a situation like that. So he's in the temple challenging their temple theology.
And is he speaking to all of the people, or is he speaking mainly to the people who are in charge, you think, of the temple
At this point, the very fact that he's doing it at this particular time of year suggests that he's looking for the broadest possible audience. Because chapter 26 contains the aftermath to the sermon here in chapter 7, that people wanted to kill him. He had so disrupted things and so upset the religious establishment. He was saved because some elders in the land said, well, wait a minute, Micah preached something very similar to this in the days of Hezekiah, and he wasn't put to death, so let's not do that here with Jeremiah.
I'm reminded, too, that Jesus and his temple episode is what landed him in such hot water, right?
Exactly. Yes, so this clearly was meant for the broadest possible audience, but very, very assuredly, the temple leadership, the establishment, were most offended by it.
Where are we going to drill down here? Where are we going to get specific?
What I wanted us to look at was how the Lord was saying, he's challenging their notion. They believe this is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. And what God is saying is, yes, I will let you stay in this place. That's verse 3. And then if you go down to verse 7, he says, okay, if you really repent, if you do what the law demands, verse 7, I will let you dwell in this place, in the land I gave to your fathers from of old. So the expectation is that the Abrahamic covenant is still intact. We're going to stay in the land. We got the temple. That's our guarantee. And the Lord is putting conditions on their presence. What's interesting is that the word place, or this place, in Hebrew makom can mean any place, but often when it's appended by the definite article, the place or this place, it means a sacred place, a holy place, a temple. You can see this very clearly in verse 12, where God says, "Well, go to my place that was in Shiloh, or Shiloh, where I made my name dwell at first." The first temple, if you will, the tabernacle, the first religious capital of Israel was at Shiloh. And there's where the tabernacle was in the days of Eli and Samuel, and that's where the glory of the Lord departed. The Ark of the Covenant was taken. So it's called my place. What's going on here is that the word place, my place, this place, seems to be used in more than one way in the same passage. So clearly, when he refers in chapter 7 to this place, which I gave to your fathers of old, seems to be referring to the whole land.
All the land. Yeah.
All the land. Yeah. It's God's place. And yet, in verse 3, and certainly verse 12 and verse 14, it seems to be the sanctuary, because he's likening Jerusalem to Shiloh. That's the interesting thing. And I've trained myself now that whenever I read the word the place or this place, think of a sacred spot. It's not just a Jewish belief thing. In the book of Judges, there's a Levite who decides he's going to go find a place where he can get employed to be a priest.
Oh.
And it's called a place.
A place.
A place, yes.
Not necessarily the place or this place.
It can't be the place. That's already established.
So the temple can be referred to as this place.
Yes.
But also the entire land can be referred to as this
so
place.
the place is the sacred space where God dwells, of course, but by extension, the land becomes sacred because of its proximity to God's presence. And that leads us to the exegetical challenge that this passage presents to us, because in verse 7, we read, if you do these things, if you truly amend your ways and your doings, etc., and do justice and don't worship other gods and shed blood in this place, etc., then I will let you dwell in this place. And that point is repeated again in verse 14. But the interesting point here is that in Hebrew, verbs have different forms. Depending on the form that's used, a different nuance is meant. First of all, I will let you dwell in this place is the common translation of what we call the PAL form. The word for dwell in our English translations is the word shakan. And shakan, as some may remember the word Shekinah.
Yeah.
The Shekinah glory, and it means where God's glory dwells. There is this hint then that when he says my place, he's talking about the temple and the land. And where the ambiguity comes in is, I will let you dwell in this place, is one reading. For those who are not familiar, the Hebrew language only, starting about the 10th century AD, began to use vowel points. And so up till that point, it was the tradition of how the passage was vocalized in the synagogues. The Masoretic text is based on this. And of course, different rabbis may have vocalized things differently. And so that's when all the dots and dashes and the marks that make things vowels and change the tenses or change the forms, etc.
So it can be a very subtle change.
It can be a very subtle change. So what am I talking about here? The one form, which is called the PAL, the intensive form of PAL, if it's translated that way, it means I will let you dwell in this place. If it's the common Cal form, it means I will dwell with you in this place. So the big difference is God's presence. Will God stay there? So there is a clear ambiguity. So if you go into your critical apparatus in your Hebrew Bible, you will see the differences in tradition. What I wonder, after thinking about this for the last 30 plus years, is if the ambiguity is not intentional. In other words, both are true. He will let them stay in this place if they are obedient in the land that he gave their fathers, but he, God, will also stay in this place with them.
Dwell with them.
Yes. I think that may be a way of understanding this, that it's not an either or, but intentionally it's a both and. And I think that's very powerful because it's suggesting to us that God is going to be faithful to his Abrahamic covenant. At the same time, his presence, which was guaranteed by the Sinaitic covenant. In other words, it brings together these two covenants, the Abrahamic and the Sinaitic, into one.
Well, that's very interesting. I had not noticed those particular distinctions before in this sermon, though I've read that sermon a number of different times.
Yeah.
But sometimes just the slightest vocalization can change a little bit of meaning in there. And we know that's true of our language, the languages that we're familiar with, but it's true here in the Hebrew.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, it's about God dwelling with his people. And it's about God allowing his people to stay
to dwell with him.
That's right.
And in the land that he gave to their fathers.
But he does set up conditions. If you do not oppress the sojourner, the fatherless, the widow, if you don't shed innocent blood, if you don't go after other gods, etc.
Yes.
Those are the things that God was looking for at the time of Jeremiah.
Right. And so when you get down to verse 9, I think it's 5 of the 10 commandments are mentioned. So it's clearly he's tying the conditions to their staying in the land to the Sinaitic covenant. In Deuteronomy 4, God says, hey, you keep violating the law, I'm going to cast you out of the land. I'm going to scatter you like sheep. Elsewhere, a verb is used in Deuteronomy it's the same word as a sling. You put a sling in a stone, you fling it out of the land. Clearly, you have this merge of the land I gave your fathers, but then the conditionality that comes with the Sinaitic covenant of obeying. And so you can see it. Will you steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, burn incense to Baal, and go after other gods you have not known? And then come stand in my place and said, we're delivered. We're saved. We've got it made because we got the covenant.
We got the covenant. We got the temple.
But God reminds them it was conditional from Mount Sinai onward.
From the very beginning. Yeah. From the very beginning. Jim, that's a great reading of this text. Thanks for helping us hear it, see it, and to experience it.
All right.
We'll see you next time on Exegetically Speaking. Jim Hoffmeier has been a good friend of the Lanier Theological Library and Learning Center for many years. I'm so glad this former Wheaton faculty member has joined us on this episode for this podcast. You know, one reason I urge you to take up the study of biblical languages is because of the faculty at Wheaton College. They are terrific women and men. They know their fields of discipline, and they will instruct you with care, the same kind of care that brought them to become professors at Wheaton College. You can find details in the show notes about how you can get started today. Thanks to our team in Houston and in Wheaton for all they do to help us produce this podcast. If you like what you hear, please share it with others. Listen regularly to help you keep up your Greek and Hebrew if you've already had those languages, but you can also listen regularly to help you get started and to give you some categories to hang your hat on. We want you to know that there is a payoff coming if you will do the work and you will learn to do translation and exegesis. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.